The first rays of dawn barely touched the horizon when Olivia Carter set up her small wooden cart in the dusty main street of Silver Creek, Colorado. The year was 1878, and her hands trembled slightly as she arranged her homemade soap bars in neat rows. Each one was a small work of art, herbs from the mountains, tallow rendered with care, and scents she'd created through countless hours of experimentation in her tiny cabin kitchen. She'd staked everything on this endeavor. Her last chance to make a living after her father's passing had left her alone in the world. "Finest handcrafted soap in the territory," she called out, her voice stronger than she felt inside. "Cleanses the skin and lifts the spirit." The early risers of Silver Creek barely glanced her way. A few women paused, picked up a bar, sniffed it politely, then set it down with thin smiles before continuing on their way. By mid-morning, as the sun beat down mercilessly on her uncovered head, Olivia had managed to sell only 2 bars, one to the kind-hearted widow who ran the general store, and another to the preacher's wife who'd likely purchased it out of pity. "Look at Miss Carter, thinking she's some fancy city perfumer," came a loud voice from the saloon entrance. It was Theodore Hartwell, son of the town's wealthiest merchant, trying to peddle soap when her daddy couldn't even keep their farm afloat. Laughter rippled through the growing crowd of onlookers. Heat rushed to Olivia's cheeks, but she lifted her chin and continued arranging her wares. "My father was a good man who had a streak of bad fortune," she replied steadily, though her hands shook. "And I'm offering a quality product at a fair price." "Quality," she says. Theodore's companion joined in. "Why pay for fancy soap when the creek water's free? You're wasting your time, girl." More laughter followed, and Olivia felt tears threatening. Every bar represented hours of work, ingredients purchased with the last of her savings. She'd spent months perfecting her recipes, believing that Silver Creek deserved something finer than the harsh lye soap most folks used. Now, standing beneath the scorching sun with barely a sail to show for it, doubt gnawed at her resolve. "How much for the lot?" The deep voice cut through the jeers, and the crowd parted. A tall man stood before her cart, his broad shoulders blocking the sun. His clothes were trail-worn but of good quality, a dark blue shirt, leather vest, and denim pants tucked into well-used boots. A gun belt hung low on his hips, and the hat shadowing his face was pushed back just enough to reveal intense gray eyes studying her soap display with genuine interest. "I beg your pardon," Olivia managed, certain she'd misheard. "Your soap, all of it, how much?" The stranger's voice was unhurried, with the faintest hint of a southern drawl. Olivia quickly counted the bars. 48 remained and calculated. "That would be $24, sir, at 50 cents apiece." Theodore snorted loudly. Isaac Quinn finally returns to Silver Creek and immediately gets swindled by the soap girl. The stranger Isaac Quinn didn't acknowledge the comment. His eyes remained fixed on Olivia as he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a leather wallet. He counted out $30 and placed them on her cart. "I'll take them all," he said simply. "And I'd like them delivered to my ranch when your next batch is ready." Stunned silence fell over the onlookers. Olivia stared at the money, unable to comprehend what had just happened. "Sir, this is too much," she finally said, pushing some bills back toward him. "The extra is for future orders," he replied. "Quality deserves fair payment." With those words, he nodded politely, turned on his heel, and started toward the general store. The crowd parted before him, whispering among themselves. Olivia watched him go, her heart hammering in her chest for reasons she couldn't quite understand. "Better box those up for Mr. Quinn," the widow from the general store said kindly, approaching Olivia's cart. "He just bought the old Henderson place, been away for 15 years, but he's Silver Creek born and raised." "Why would a rancher need so much soap?" Olivia asked, still bewildered. The widow smiled. "That's a question only Isaac Quinn can answer, but I'd count your blessings, dear. Not many get such an opportunity." As Olivia carefully wrapped each bar in brown paper, her mind raced with questions about the mysterious man who had just changed her fortunes with a simple transaction. Little did she know that this moment would alter the course of her life forever. Isaac Quinn strode into the general store, nodding at familiar faces who regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. 15 years was a long time to be gone from a place, and Silver Creek had both changed and remained exactly the same. The wooden buildings were weathered, some new establishments had sprung up, but the same dust covered everything, and the same narrow mines seemed to populate the town. Isaac Quinn, Mrs. Holloway greeted him from behind the counter. "Welcome home. Your father would have been proud to see you return." "Thank you, madam," he replied, removing his hat out of respect. "I need supplies for the ranch, feed, seed, tools starting fresh." As Mrs. Holloway gathered his order, Isaac's thoughts returned to the young woman in the street, Olivia Carter. He remembered her father vaguely, a hard-working farmer who'd struggled after his wife died. The daughter had been just a child when Isaac left Silver Creek to fight in the war, then to seek his fortune further west. He hadn't expected to return, but his father's passing and the inheritance of the family ranch had drawn him back. What he hadn't expected was to find such determination in a pair of amber eyes, or to feel such immediate indignation at the town's treatment of the girl. There was something about her, a quiet dignity despite the ridicule that had compelled him to intervene. "The Carter girl has had it rough," Mrs. Holloway commented, seeming to read his thoughts. "Her father passed last winter, pneumonia took him, left her the small cabin and not much else. Most folks expected her to marry or leave town, but she's stubborn as they come." Isaac nodded, unsurprised. "Her soap, is it actually good?" Mrs. Holloway smiled. "Best I've ever used, lathers beautifully, smells like heaven." "The girl has a gift, but folks around here don't appreciate such niceties. They think she's putting on airs." "Small towns rarely reward innovation," Isaac remarked, paying for his supplies. "Have these delivered to the Henderson Place Quinn Ranch now, I suppose? And what about the soap?" Mrs. Holloway asked with a knowing look. Isaac paused. "Tell Miss Carter I'll expect delivery when she's ready. No rush." As he left the store, he glanced down the street to where Olivia was carefully packing up her cart, her movements precise and graceful despite her obvious exhaustion. The sun caught in her chestnut hair, pulled back in a simple bun with rebellious tendrils escaping around her face. Something twisted in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation he couldn't quite name. 15 years of hard living had taught Isaac Quinn to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were telling him that Olivia Carter was someone worth knowing better. 2 weeks passed before Olivia gathered enough courage to visit the Quinn Ranch. The wagon she'd borrowed from the livery stable was loaded with her freshly made soap, 60 bars in total, wrapped in brown paper and nestled in wooden crates. She'd worked tirelessly, gathering ingredients, rendering fat, mixing oils, and curing each bar to perfection. The Henderson Place, now Quinn Ranch, lay 3 miles outside of town, a modest spread compared to some, but with good water access and fertile pastureland. As Olivia approached, she could see signs of renewal everywhere. The fences had been mended, the barn roof repaired, and a small herd of cattle grazed contentedly in the nearest field. The main house itself was a solid 2-story structure of weathered wood, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Smoke curled from the chimney despite the warm day, and as Olivia pulled her wagon to a stop, the front door opened. Isaac Quinn stepped out onto the porch, wiping his hands on a cloth. He was dressed simply in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms browned by the sun. Without his hat, his dark hair fell across his forehead, slightly too long, as if he hadn't bothered with a proper haircut in some time. "Miss Carter," he called, descending the steps. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about our arrangement." "Not at all, Mr. Quinn," she replied, setting the brake on the wagon. "Quality soap cannot be rushed. Each bar needs 4 weeks to cure properly." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Is that so? Then I appreciate your dedication to your craft." He approached the wagon and peered inside at the crates. "You've been busy." "You paid for future orders," Olivia explained. "I've brought 60 bars total, the 48 you purchased, plus 12 more for the advance you provided." Isaac nodded, seemingly pleased. "Very fair, let me help you unload these." Together, they carried the crates onto the porch. Olivia couldn't help noticing that the house appeared to be in the midst of renovation. Through the open door, she glimpsed freshly plastered walls and new furniture alongside older pieces. "You've done a great deal with the place in just a couple of weeks," she commented. "I've hired good men," Isaac replied, "and I'm not afraid of hard work myself." He gestured toward the house. "Would you care for some coffee or tea, Miss Carter? You've come a long way." Propriety dictated she should decline. An unmarried woman didn't enter a bachelor's home unaccompanied. But curiosity and an inexplicable sense of safety in Isaac's presence prompted her to nod. Coffee would be welcome, thank you. The kitchen was surprisingly orderly for a man living alone. A large cast iron stove dominated one wall, and a sturdy wooden table with 4 chairs occupied the center of the room. Isaac gestured for her to sit while he placed a kettle on the stove. "I must admit I'm curious, Mr. Quinn," Olivia said as he prepared the coffee. "Why would one man need so much soap?" Isaac's back was to her, but she saw his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath before he turned. "Honesty seems the best policy between business associates," he said, leaning against the counter. "I didn't need the soap, Miss Carter." "I needed to make a point." Olivia stiffened. "What point might that be? That this town is too quick to dismiss what's valuable?" His gray eyes held her steadily. "I remember what it's like to be underestimated in Silver Creek." "So it was charity," Olivia said flatly, disappointment washing through her. "No." Isaac's response was immediate and firm. "It was recognition. Your soap is exceptional. I've been using it daily. The lavender variety helps with my headaches, and the pine scent reminds me of the mountains where I spent many years." He poured the coffee into 2 mugs and brought them to the table. "I simply accelerated what the market would eventually realize." Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm mug, studying him. "You've been gone 15 years, Mrs. Holloway tells me." Isaac nodded. "Left after the war, tried mining in Nevada, ranching in Wyoming, even ran some cattle drives to Kansas City. Made enough to buy back my family's land when I heard my father had passed." "I'm sorry about your father," Olivia said softly. "We weren't close," Isaac admitted. "He didn't approve of my leaving, expected me to stay and work our land his way." He took a sip of coffee. "But I needed to find my own path." "I understand that feeling," Olivia replied, surprised at how easily conversation flowed between them. "After my father died, everyone expected me to marry Theodore Hartwell or leave town, as if those were my only options." Isaac's eyes darkened. "Hartwell isn't worthy of you." The blunt statement hung in the air between them, charged with something Olivia couldn't quite name. She looked down at her coffee, heat rising to her cheeks. "My soap-making was meant to be my independence," she explained. "A way to support myself without relying on anyone's charity or expectations." "And it will be," Isaac said confidently. "In fact, I have a proposition for you, Miss Carter." Olivia raised her eyebrows questioningly. "I've connections in Denver merchants who cater to a clientele that would appreciate quality products like yours. With your permission, I'd like to take some samples on my next trip there." Hope fluttered in Olivia's chest. "You would do that?" "For a reasonable commission," Isaac clarified with a smile. "This isn't charity, Miss Carter. It's good business." Olivia studied him, trying to discern his true motives. In her experience, men rarely offered assistance without expecting something in return. Yet there was an openness to Isaac Quinn's expression that invited trust. "Why help me?" she asked directly. Isaac considered her question for a long moment. "Perhaps because no one helped me when I needed it," he finally said. "Or perhaps because I recognize determination when I see it." His eyes met hers. "Or perhaps there are other reasons I'm not quite ready to voice." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Olivia's heart quickened as she realized that Isaac Quinn truly saw her in a way no one in Silver Creek ever had. "I accept your proposition, Mr. Quinn," she said, extending her hand across the table. His large hand enveloped hers, warm and calloused. "Isaac," he corrected gently, "if we're to be business partners, we should dispense with formalities." "Olivia, then," she replied, aware that her hand remained in his longer than strictly necessary. When she finally pulled away and stood to leave, Isaac walked her to her wagon. As he helped her up onto the seat, he said, "I'll be in Denver next week. Could you have some sample bars ready by then?" "Perhaps your finest varieties. I'll have them ready," Olivia promised. "And thank you, Isaac." As she drove back toward town, Olivia couldn't stop the smile that spread across her face. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a sense of possibility, and it had nothing to do with soap, and everything to do with the man who had just entered her life. Isaac watched Olivia's wagon disappear down the road, one hand absently stroking his jaw. He hadn't planned on involving himself in anyone's affairs when he returned to Silver Creek. His intention had been to rebuild the ranch, establish himself, and perhaps find some measure of peace after years of restless wandering. Yet something about Olivia Carter had reached past his carefully constructed defenses. Maybe it was the quiet dignity with which she'd faced the town's ridicule, or perhaps it was the obvious care and artistry she poured into her craft. Whatever the reason, Isaac found himself thinking about her amber eyes and determined chin far more often than was reasonable for a man who'd sworn off entanglements. With a sigh, he returned to the house, stepping over the crates of soap in the entryway. He'd meant what he said about having connections in Denver. During his years away, he'd formed friendships with merchants and traders throughout the Western territories. Those connections had served him well, allowing him to build the modest fortune that now funded his return to Silver Creek. Taking one bar of soap from a crate lavender, his favorite, Isaac inhaled the soothing scent. There was no denying the quality of Olivia's work. The merchants in Denver would recognize its value immediately. The commission he'd mentioned was merely a pretense. He'd have helped her regardless. As he returned to his interrupted task of staining the new shelves he'd built in the study, Isaac found himself smiling. For the first time in years, he was looking forward to something beyond the day's work. True to her word, Olivia arrived at Quinn Ranch 4 days later with a carefully packed wooden box containing 12 soap varieties. She'd labored through the nights, creating special blends with the finest ingredients she could afford: rose petals gathered from Mrs. Holloway's garden, sage from the hillsides, honey purchased from a farmer outside town. Each bar was wrapped in delicate paper she'd hand-stamped with a simple design of her own creation, a mountain flower surrounded by swirling lines representing water. She'd even created small cards describing each scent and its properties, written in her neat, flowing script. Isaac was visibly impressed as he examined her work. "This presentation would fit in the finest shops in Denver," he commented, carefully repacking the samples. "You've thought of everything." They sat on the porch, drinking lemonade as Isaac described the merchants he planned to approach. The afternoon stretched into evening as they talked, moving from business to more personal matters with surprising ease. "Why soap?" Isaac asked as the setting sun painted the distant mountains gold and crimson. "Of all the things you could have chosen to make your way." Olivia smiled, memories washing over her. "My mother. She came from Boston, originally a gentleman's daughter who fell in love with my father when he delivered lumber to her father's business. Her family disowned her when she married him and moved west." She traced the rim of her glass with one finger. "But she brought with her certain refinements, including the knowledge of making fine soaps and toiletries. She taught me before she died." "How old were you when you lost her?" Isaac asked gently. 12, Olivia replied. "Childbirth." "The baby my brother didn't survive either." Isaac nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It shapes you, losing someone that young. Your mother, when I was 10, fever took her." He looked out toward the darkening land. "Father was never the same afterward, turned hard, unforgiving." They sat in companionable silence as the first stars appeared. Olivia knew she should return to town. Propriety demanded it, but something about Isaac's presence made her reluctant to leave. "I should go," she finally said, though without conviction. "It's getting dark," Isaac pointed out. "The road can be treacherous at night." Olivia hesitated, torn between proper behavior and practical concerns. "I have a proposal," Isaac continued. "Stay in my father's old room tonight. I'll sleep in the barn. Tomorrow morning I'll escort you back to town before I depart for Denver." Any other man making such a suggestion would have earned Olivia's immediate refusal. But Isaac had shown her nothing but respect, and the thought of navigating the rutted road in darkness was genuinely concerning. "People will talk," she said, though it was more observation than objection. Isaac's mouth quirked. "People in Silver Creek talk regardless. Better to give them something interesting." Against her better judgment, Olivia agreed. Isaac showed her to a simply furnished but clean bedroom, provided a nightshirt that had belonged to his father, and then excused himself to the barn after ensuring she had everything she needed. Alone in the quiet house, Olivia explored her surroundings. Unlike most bachelor dwellings she'd seen, Isaac's home was orderly and purposeful. Bookshelves lined the study walls, filled with volumes on history, science, and literature. The kitchen was well equipped, and there were signs everywhere of a man building something meant to last. In the bedroom, a framed daguerreotype caught her attention, a family portrait showing a stern-faced man, a gentle-looking woman, and a solemn boy who could only be Isaac at about 8 years old. The resemblance between the boy and the man was striking, though the child's eyes held none of the quiet confidence Isaac now possessed. As Olivia slipped into bed, she found herself wondering what experiences had transformed that solemn boy into the man who had so unexpectedly entered her life. And more concerning still, she wondered why she cared so much to find out. Morning brought clear skies and birdsong. Olivia woke to the smell of coffee and bacon and found Isaac in the kitchen preparing breakfast as comfortably as any seasoned cook. "You seem quite capable in the kitchen for a bachelor," she observed, accepting the coffee he offered. "Necessity," he replied with a shrug. "Spent too many years on my own to rely on others for basic needs." Over breakfast, they discussed the Denver trip once more. Isaac would be gone for approximately 10 days, promising to return with orders if his contacts showed interest, which he assured her they would. As they rode back to town side by side, Olivia on her borrowed wagon and Isaac on his sturdy bay gelding, she found herself already counting the days until his return. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. She'd sworn after her father's death to rely only on herself, yet here she was, pinning hopes on a man she barely knew. "I'll send word when I return," Isaac said as they reached the edge of town. "Try not to let the local fools discourage you while I'm gone." Olivia smiled. "I've managed this long without a champion, Mr. Quinn." "Isaac," he reminded her, his eyes warm, "and you've never needed a champion, Olivia, just someone who sees your worth." He tipped his hat, wheeled his horse around, and rode off toward the Denver road. Olivia watched him go, aware of curious eyes from townsfolk who'd witnessed their arrival together. Let them talk, she thought, squaring her shoulders. For the first time in years, she had something they didn't hope. The following days were filled with activity as Olivia threw herself into soap production. If Isaac secured orders from Denver merchants, she would need inventory. Her small cabin became a workshop, with every available surface covered in drying bars, bottles of essential oils, and herbs hanging from the rafters. Word of her arrangement with Isaac spread quickly through Silver Creek, bringing with it both increased interest and skepticism. Mrs. Holloway began displaying Olivia's soap in her store, and to everyone's surprise, sales picked up as curiosity overcame prejudice. Not everyone was supportive, however. Theodore Hartwell made a point of loudly questioning Olivia's arrangement with that Quinn fellow whenever she appeared in town. What kind of business keeps a respectable woman overnight at a bachelor's ranch? He asked pointedly as Olivia selected fabric at the dry goods store a week after Isaac's departure. "The profitable kind, Mr. Hartwell," she replied coolly, though her cheeks burned. "Something you might recognize if you weren't so busy judging others." Theodore's face darkened. "Your father would be ashamed, Olivia. He asked me to look out for you before he died." "My father asked you to offer me fair price for our farm," Olivia corrected, anger flaring. "Instead, you waited until after his funeral to offer half its value, knowing I had nowhere else to go. So forgive me if I don't value your concern for my reputation." She paid for her purchases and left, trembling with suppressed emotion. Theodore's words had struck a nerve, not because they were true, but because they reminded her how vulnerable her position remained. Without Isaac's help, would she ever truly achieve independence? The thought troubled her as she returned to her cabin and resumed her work. She had come to rely on Isaac's support more quickly than was wise. What if he returned from Denver with disappointing news? What if his interest in her business and perhaps in her proved fleeting? By the time 10 days had passed with no word from Isaac, anxiety had replaced hope. Olivia continued production, but found herself watching the road from town with increasing frequency. When the 11th day came and went without his return, she tried to convince herself that travel delays were common, that business in Denver might have taken longer than expected. On the 12th day, she was arranging her soaps at Mrs. Holloway's store when a dusty rider appeared in the street. Her heart leapt, then plummeted when she realized it wasn't Isaac but a young man wearing the distinctive hat of a postal rider. "Telegram for Miss Olivia Carter," he called. Entering the store with trembling fingers, Olivia accepted the paper and unfolded it. "Returning tomorrow. Stop excellent news. Stop prepare for substantial orders. Stop." Isaac relief washed through her so powerfully that she had to steady herself against the counter. Mrs. Holloway observed with a knowing smile but said nothing. The following morning dawned clear and warm as Olivia dressed with particular care. She chose her best dress, a simple blue cotton with white piping that her mother had sewn years before. Her hair, usually confined in a practical bun, she arranged in a softer style, with curls framing her face. "Going somewhere special, dear?" Mrs. Holloway asked when Olivia stopped by the store to collect some supplies. "Just expecting a business meeting," Olivia replied, though her flushed cheeks betrayed her. Mrs. Holloway merely nodded, but her eyes twinkled with understanding. "I've known Isaac Quinn since he was born," she said casually. "Stubborn as they come, but with a heart as true as any I've encountered. His father never appreciated that about him." Olivia didn't quite know how to respond, so she simply smiled and gathered her purchases. As she left the store, the distant sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. Coming down the main street at an easy canter was Isaac, looking travel-worn but smiling broadly when he caught sight of her. He dismounted in one fluid motion and approached her, hat in hand. "Miss Carter," he greeted her, formality for the benefit of onlookers, though his eyes conveyed a more personal message. "I bring good tidings from Denver." "Mr. Quinn," she replied, equally formal. "I'm most eager to hear them, perhaps over lunch." He suggested, gesturing toward the hotel restaurant, the most respectable establishment in town for a man and woman to dine together without causing undue gossip. Olivia nodded, and they walked side by side, aware of the curious glances from townspeople. Inside the restaurant, they were shown to a quiet corner table where Isaac wasted no time in sharing his news. "3 merchants have placed orders," he said, his voice vibrating with excitement. "Pemberton's Emporium, the Ladies' Bazaar, and Wilson's Apothecary, all established businesses with wealthy clientele." He withdrew several papers from his vest pocket and laid them before her. 50 bars each to start. They were particularly impressed with your rose, honey, and pine sage varieties." Olivia stared at the orders, calculations racing through her mind. 150 bars, she whispered. That's more than I've made in the past 3 months combined. And they'll order more if these sell well, which they will, Isaac assured her. The Wilson fellow even suggested bottles of liquid soap might be popular with his customers, something about European trends. Liquid soap. Olivia's mind immediately began formulating recipes and processes. "I could manage that with the right bottles and..." Isaac smiled, watching her enthusiasm with evident pleasure. "There's more," he said, withdrawing another paper. "I took the liberty of having this drawn up in Denver. It was a business license and formal documentation for Carter's natural soaps and toiletries." "Isaac," Olivia breathed, touching the paper reverently, "this makes it real." "You made it real," he corrected. "I merely introduced your work to those who could appreciate it." Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted between them. The pretense of mere business partnership suddenly seemed inadequate to describe the connection they both felt. "I missed you," Isaac said quietly, the words clearly surprising him as much as her. "I found myself thinking of you at odd moments throughout the trip." Olivia's heart quickened. "I watched for you every day," she admitted. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Olivia, I know we've known each other only a short time, but Isaac Quinn." A loud voice interrupted. "So the prodigal finally returns to grace us with his presence." Sheriff William Donovan stood beside their table, a tall man with a graying mustache and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Isaac withdrew his hand from Olivia's and stood, extending it to the lawman. "Sheriff Donovan, good to see you looking well." The sheriff shook Isaac's hand, his expression a mixture of warmth and wariness. "Heard you bought back the family place, making improvements, I'm told." "Yes, sir, planning to stay this time." The sheriff's gaze shifted to Olivia. "Miss Carter." "Doing well, I hope." "Very well, thank you, Sheriff," she replied politely. "Here you two have some kind of business arrangement," Donovan continued, looking between them. "Soap, is it?" Miss Carter is a talented craftsperson whose products are now in demand in Denver, Isaac explained smoothly. I merely facilitated introductions. The sheriff nodded slowly. Well, that's fine then. Just remember this is a respectable town. We value propriety. His eyes lingered meaningfully on their intimate table setting. Message received, Sheriff, Isaac said, his tone respectful but firm. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have business matters to discuss. After the sheriff departed, an awkward silence fell between them. The moment had been broken, reality intruding on the fragile connection they'd been forming. Perhaps we should continue this discussion at your workshop, Isaac suggested, more practical for reviewing the orders in detail. Olivia nodded, grateful for his tact. Yes, that would be sensible. As they walked through town toward her small cabin on the outskirts, Olivia was acutely aware of the distance Isaac maintained between them, proper, respectful, and suddenly frustrating. Whatever he had been about to say in the restaurant remained unspoken, the sheriff's interruption a stark reminder of the social constraints that governed their interactions. At her cabin, Isaac helped her calculate the supplies she would need to fulfill the Denver orders. They worked side by side at her small table, their heads bent over papers covered in figures. The practical work eased the tension between them, allowing conversation to flow naturally once more. You'll need help, Isaac observed as they tallied the hours required to produce so many bars. This is more than one person can manage alone. I could perhaps hire the Cooper girl, Olivia mused. She's 16 and clever with her hands. Her family needs the income. Isaac nodded approvingly. And for deliveries, Denver is a 3-day journey each way. I hadn't considered that, Olivia admitted, frowning. I can't leave production for that long, especially not regularly. I could handle deliveries, Isaac offered. My ranch foreman can manage things for a week each month, or we could hire a dedicated driver once the business grows. The casual way he spoke of their future as if their partnership were a settled thing that would continue indefinitely warmed Olivia from within, yet questions remained, hovering unspoken between them. Isaac, she finally said as evening approached and he prepared to leave. What is this, truly? Between us, he paused at the door, his expression serious. What do you want it to be, Olivia? The directness of his question took her breath away. I'm not sure, she answered honestly. I know that when you're gone, I count the days until your return. I know that you've shown me more respect and understanding in weeks than I've received from anyone in years. She took a deep breath, and I know that I'm afraid to trust these feelings. Isaac stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. I've spent 15 years wandering, Olivia, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots, never allowing myself to care too deeply. His voice dropped lower. Until I saw you in that street, refusing to be broken by their mockery. He reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wished, and brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. I don't have pretty words or grand promises, but I know that I want to build something lasting, and I know that I want you to be part of it. Olivia's heart thundered in her chest. The town will talk, she whispered. Let them, Isaac replied, his fingers lingering against her skin. We have nothing to be ashamed of. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Olivia knew that if she leaned forward just slightly, their lips would meet. Part of her, the proper, cautious part, told her it was too soon, too fast. But another part, the part that had survived loss and loneliness and still dared to hope, urged her forward. The decision was taken from her when a sharp knock sounded at the door. Isaac stepped back immediately, composure returning to his features as Olivia called, "Who is it?" "It's Alina Holloway, dear," came the reply. "I've brought those special oils you requested from the store." With a mixture of disappointment and relief, Olivia opened the door to the storekeeper's wife, whose knowing glance between her and Isaac suggested she understood exactly what she had interrupted. "Mr. Quinn," Mrs. Holloway greeted him. "How fortunate to find you still here. My husband was hoping to speak with you about supplying the store with some of your beef once your herd is established. I'd be happy to discuss it with him tomorrow," Isaac replied smoothly, reaching for his hat. "For now, I should be getting back to the ranch. Miss Carter has a great deal of work ahead to fulfill these Denver orders." He bid them both good evening, his eyes lingering on Olivia's just long enough to convey a private message. This conversation isn't finished. As Isaac rode back to his ranch through the gathering dusk, his mind was filled with Olivia, her intelligence, her determination, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her craft. He hadn't planned on forming attachments in Silver Creek. After years of independence, the idea of emotional entanglement had seemed unnecessary, even unwelcome. Yet here he was, unable to imagine his future without her in it. It wasn't just desire, though that was certainly part of it. It was deeper, a recognition of kindred spirits, of shared values and complementary strengths. By the time he reached the ranch, Isaac had made a decision. He would court Olivia Carter properly, with all the respect she deserved. And he would do it openly, regardless of the town's gossip or disapproval. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity as Olivia's soap business expanded beyond anything she had imagined. With young Sarah Cooper's help, production doubled, and a steady stream of bars made their way to Denver, returning with orders for more. Isaac handled the deliveries personally, using each trip to cultivate new customers and refine their business strategy. Between trips, he called on Olivia regularly, sometimes to discuss business, but increasingly for the simple pleasure of her company. They rode together on Sundays, picnicked by the creek, and spent evenings on her porch talking until the stars emerged. Slowly, the town grew accustomed to seeing them together, though whispers persisted. Theodore Hartwell remained a persistent problem, making snide remarks whenever they encountered him and spreading insinuations about the nature of their relationship. His wounded pride had hardened into something uglier, particularly as Olivia's business flourished. "You should be cautious around Hartwell," Isaac warned one evening as they sat in Mrs. Holloway's parlor, the older woman providing the proper chaperoning their growing relationship required. "Men like him don't take rejection well." "Theodore is all bluster," Olivia replied, though she'd become uncomfortable with the intensity of his stares when they crossed paths. "He wanted my father's land, not me." "Perhaps," Isaac conceded. "Still, I don't like the way he watches you." Mrs. Holloway, knitting placidly across the room, looked up. "Theodore's father spoiled him terribly after his mother passed. Never told the boy no about anything. Some men never learn to handle disappointment with grace." The conversation shifted to pleasanter topics, but Isaac made a mental note to keep a closer eye on Hartwell. Something about the man's demeanor troubled him, a simmering resentment that seemed to grow with each passing week. As summer gave way to autumn, Olivia's business continued to thrive. The income allowed her to expand her workshop, purchase quality ingredients in bulk, and even hire a second assistant. With each successful delivery to Denver, her confidence grew, as did her feelings for Isaac. Their courtship progressed with a comfortable inevitability that nonetheless thrilled her. Isaac was attentive without being possessive, supportive without taking over. He respected her independence while making it clear he wanted to share her future. On a crisp October evening, Isaac invited Olivia to dinner at his ranch, properly chaperoned by Mrs. Holloway and her husband. The house had been transformed in the months since Olivia's first visit. The renovations were complete, the rooms furnished with a combination of family heirlooms and new pieces that reflected Isaac's practical taste. After dinner, while the Holloways chatted with Isaac's foreman on the porch, Isaac led Olivia to the study. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm light over bookshelves and comfortable chairs. On the desk lay a leather-bound ledger. "I wanted to show you something," Isaac said, opening the book. "The accounts for Carter's natural soaps for the past 4 months." Olivia leaned over the neatly kept figures, eyes widening as she took in the totals. "Is this accurate? We've made this much profit already." "Every penny," Isaac confirmed. "Your business is not just surviving, Olivia, it's thriving." Pride swelled in her chest as she studied the evidence of her success. What had begun as a desperate attempt to support herself had become a genuine enterprise with real potential. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, looking up at Isaac with eyes shining. "You underestimate yourself," he replied, taking her hands in his. "You had the skill, the vision, and the determination. I merely provided opportunity." In the firelight, his face was both familiar and somehow new, the strong jawline, the slight crease between his brows, the warmth in his gray eyes that appeared only when he looked at her. "Olivia," he said, his voice low and serious, These past months have been the happiest of my life. After years of wandering, I've found where I belong and who I belong with. Her heart began to race as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. This was my mother's, he said, opening it to reveal a simple gold ring set with a single pearl. My father gave it to her when they were younger and happier before life hardened him. He took a deep breath. I'm not offering you just a ring or a name, Olivia. I'm offering partnership in everything: life, work, dreams. He knelt before her, still holding her hands. Olivia Carter, will you marry me? Time seemed to stop as emotions flooded through her: joy, disbelief, and a bone-deep certainty that this was right. This man who had first seen value in her work now saw value in her heart and offered his in return. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Isaac. I will marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, rose, and finally, after months of proper restraint, pulled her into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with the release of long-held desire. When they finally parted, both were breathless and smiling. Mrs. Holloway will be scandalized if we don't rejoin them soon, Olivia said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. Let her be scandalized, Isaac murmured, pressing his forehead to hers. I've waited months to kiss my future wife. The sound of the study door opening caused them to step apart hastily. Mrs. Holloway stood in the doorway, taking in their flushed faces and clasped hands with a knowing smile. I see congratulations are in order, she said, her eyes twinkling. About time, if you ask me. Isaac laughed, his arm sliding around Olivia's waist. Your approval means a great deal, Mrs. Holloway. Well, you'll want to make it official soon, the older woman advised. Winter weddings are always lovely, and it will give the gossips less time to wag their tongues. As they rejoined the others, sharing their news, Olivia felt a contentment she had never expected to find. From the lonely, desperate woman selling soap in the street to a successful businesswoman with a future full of promise, the transformation seemed almost miraculous. Yet there was nothing miraculous about it, she reflected as Isaac's hand found hers. It had been built on hard work, courage, and the belief one man had shown in her when everyone else had laughed. News of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek, met with reactions ranging from genuine pleasure to thinly veiled disapproval. Mrs. Holloway and her circle of friends immediately began planning a December wedding, while Olivia split her time between growing her business and preparing to move to the ranch that would become her home. Isaac traveled to Denver once more, returning with wedding gifts from their merchant friends and a specially commissioned sign for Olivia's expanding workshop. Carter Quinn Natural Soaps and Toiletries. It read in elegant gold lettering on polished wood. I thought you might want to incorporate both our names, he explained as she admired it, though the decision is entirely yours. Olivia traced the hyphenated surname with her finger. It's perfect, she said, a true partnership. Their happiness was marred only by Theodore Hartwell's increasingly hostile behavior. He made a point of leaving any establishment they entered, muttering just loudly enough to be heard about women forgetting their proper place and outsiders corrupting decent folk. The situation came to a head 2 weeks before the wedding. Olivia was working late in her workshop, finishing a special order for a Denver hotel, when a pounding on her door startled her. Thinking it might be Isaac returning early from a cattle auction in the next county, she opened the door without hesitation. Theodore Hartwell stood on her threshold, swaying slightly, the smell of whiskey heavy on his breath. Theodore, she said coolly, maintaining her grip on the door. It's late. Whatever business you have can wait until morning. Business, he slurred, attempting to push past her into the cabin. That's all you women think about now, business and independence. It ain't natural. Olivia blocked his entry, alarm rising. You're drunk, Theodore, go home. His face darkened. Don't tell me what to do, Olivia. Your father wanted us to marry, you know that. Instead, you're throwing yourself at that Quinn fellow, a man who abandoned his family and this town. My father wanted me to be secure and happy, Olivia replied firmly. I am both, no thanks to you. Now please leave before one of us says something we'll regret. Theodore's hand shot out, gripping her wrist painfully. You've gotten mighty high and mighty with your fancy soap and your Denver customers. But I remember when you were just Tom Carter's plain little girl, desperate for attention. Fear and anger surged through Olivia as she tried to pull away. Let go of me, Theodore, now, or what? he sneered, tightening his grip. "Your precious Isaac isn't here to protect you." "Maybe it's time you remembered that a woman needs a man's guidance." The sound of a pistol being cocked froze them both. "I believe the lady asked you to leave, Hartwell." Sheriff Donovan stood a few paces away, his revolver trained steadily on Theodore. "Release her, now." Theodore's fingers uncurled from Olivia's wrist, and he stepped back, sullen defiance replacing the aggression in his posture. "We were just having a discussion, Sheriff," he muttered. "Didn't look like much of a discussion from where I was standing," Donovan replied evenly. "Looked more like assault on a lady. That's a serious offense in this territory." "She ain't no lady," Theodore spat. "Carrying on with Quinn, living alone, running a business like she's a man." The sheriff's expression hardened. "That's enough, Hartwell. You're spending the night in my jail to sober up. Tomorrow, you and your father can discuss how you're going to apologize to Miss Carter and what reparations might be appropriate." As the sheriff led Theodore away, Olivia sagged against her doorframe, relief and delayed shock making her tremble. She hadn't realized how frightened she'd been until the danger passed. "Are you all right, Miss Carter?" Sheriff Donovan asked, returning after securing Theodore in his deputy's custody. "Do you need the doctor to look at your wrist?" "No, thank you, Sheriff," she replied, though the area was already bruising. "How did you happen to be here?" Donovan's weathered face softened slightly. "Quinn asked me to keep an eye on your place while he was away, said Hartwell had been making threats." He shrugged. "Didn't take it too seriously until I saw him heading this way, 3 sheets to the wind and muttering to himself." Gratitude for Isaac's foresight washed through her. "Thank you for intervening." "Just doing my job," the sheriff replied. "Though if you don't mind some advice, you might want to reconsider living alone out here, at least until after the wedding. Mrs. Holloway would likely welcome your company." Olivia nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his suggestion. "I'll speak with her tomorrow." After the sheriff departed, Olivia secured her door and windows, her workshop suddenly feeling vulnerable in a way it never had before. Theodore's words echoed in her mind, along with the memory of his painful grip on her wrist. When Isaac returned 2 days later and learned what had happened, his fury was controlled but palpable. He immediately went to confront Theodore, only to discover that the young man had left town, reportedly for an extended visit to relatives in St. Louis. His father claims it was a planned trip, Isaac told Olivia as they sat in Mrs. Holloway's parlor, where Olivia had taken up temporary residence. But the timing suggests otherwise. "I'm just relieved he's gone," Olivia admitted, unconsciously rubbing her wrist where fading bruises still marked Theodore's assault. "Though I hate that he's essentially escaped consequences." Isaac's eyes darkened as he noticed her gesture. "Men like Theodore rarely face the consequences they deserve. But rest assured, if he returns to Silver Creek and threatens you again, he'll answer to me." The protective edge in his voice warmed Olivia, even as she placed a calming hand on his arm. "Let's not allow him to cast a shadow over our happiness. The wedding is just 10 days away, and there's still so much to prepare." Isaac's expression softened as he covered her hand with his. "You're right, as usual, though I'm tempted to suggest we elope tomorrow and be done with it." "And deprive Mrs. Holloway of the wedding she's planning," Olivia teased. "She'd never forgive us." The wedding preparations continued apace, with the entire town seemingly involved despite the initially mixed reactions to their engagement. The church was decorated with pine boughs and winter berries, and Mrs. Holloway supervised the creation of a wedding dress that transformed Olivia's simple beauty into something luminous. On the morning of the wedding, snow fell gently outside the Holloway home as Olivia prepared for the ceremony. Women from town bustled about, arranging her hair, adjusting her dress, and offering well-meaning advice about married life that made her blush. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Holloway said, tears glistening in her eyes as she pinned a sprig of holly to Olivia's hair. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become." Emotion welled in Olivia's throat. "I wish she could be here," she whispered, "and my father too." "They are here in their own way," the older woman assured her, "in your strength, your talent, and your capacity for love despite loss." She squeezed Olivia's hands. "Now, let's not keep that fine man waiting any longer." The church was filled to capacity when Olivia entered on Mr. Holloway's arm. Candles illuminated the simple space, casting a golden glow over the gathered townspeople. But Olivia saw only Isaac, standing tall and straight at the altar, his eyes fixed on her with an expression of such profound love and wonder that her heart seemed to expand within her chest. Each step toward him felt like a step toward home, not the physical structure of the ranch they would share, but the emotional sanctuary they had built together through trust, respect, and growing love. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of words and promises. Olivia would later remember clearly only the warmth of Isaac's hands holding hers, the deep timbre of his voice as he pledged himself to her, and the indescribable joy that flooded through her as the minister pronounced them husband and wife. Their kiss, witnessed by the entire town, sealed more than just their marriage vows. It represented the culmination of a journey that had begun with a cart of soap in a dusty street and a man who had seen value where others saw only folly. The celebration afterward at the hotel was joyous and surprisingly free of the tension that had marked earlier town reactions to their relationship. Even Sheriff Donovan unbent enough to offer a toast to two of Silver Creek's finest entrepreneurs, acknowledging both their business success and their personal happiness. As evening fell and the party continued, Isaac drew Olivia away from the crowded room onto the hotel's covered veranda. Snow was still falling, transforming the town into a pristine wonderland of white. "Happy, Mrs. Quinn?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "Though I believe it's Mrs. Carter Quinn, according to our business sign." Isaac chuckled, his breath warm against her ear. "I stand corrected. Mrs. Carter Quinn it is in business and in life." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the snow fall before Isaac spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about expansion," he said. "Not just for the soap business, though that's part of it. What would you think about opening a proper shop in Denver? We could maintain production here but have a dedicated space to showcase your creations." Olivia turned in his arms, surprised and touched by his continued focus on her business, even on their wedding day. "You've been planning this, considering possibilities," he clarified. "Your talent deserves a wider audience, and Denver is just the beginning. I have connections in San Francisco, Chicago. One step at a time," Olivia laughed, though excitement kindled at the possibilities he outlined. "Let's master Denver first." Isaac smiled, brushing a snowflake from her cheek. "Always practical. It's one of the many things I love about you." His expression grew more serious. "I want you to know that I'll never ask you to choose between your business and our life together. Both can flourish side by side." Olivia reached up to touch his face, overcome with gratitude for this man who saw her so completely. "I never thought I could have both independence and partnership. You've shown me it's possible." Their lips met in a kiss that promised far more than the public one they had shared in the church, a private pledge of passion and partnership that would carry them through the years ahead. As they reluctantly rejoined their guests, Olivia's gaze fell on her wedding ring, nestled beside the engagement pearl that had been Isaac's mother's. The gold band gleamed in the lamplight, a simple circle representing the journey that had brought them to this moment, from a cart of soap bars in a dusty street to a future bright with promise. They had built something remarkable together, defying expectations and creating a life that honored both their individual strengths and their shared dreams. And it had all begun because one man had seen value where others had only seen reasons to laugh. Spring brought new beginnings to the Quinn Ranch. The Denver shop Carter Quinn Natural Soaps and Toiletries opened to immediate success, managed by a capable woman Isaac had met during his cattle driving days. Olivia traveled there monthly to deliver new products and develop relationships with customers, while maintaining production at her expanded workshop near Silver Creek. The ranch thrived as well, with Isaac's herd growing and his innovative breeding practices drawing attention from neighboring ranchers. Their home became a welcoming haven, filled with books, music, and the sense of Olivia's experimental soap creations. On a warm May evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold and crimson, Olivia rested her head against Isaac's shoulder. "Do you remember that first day?" she asked softly, When you bought all my soap, Isaac's arm tightened around her. I remember a woman who refused to be defeated by small minds and smaller hearts, a woman who captured my attention and then my heart. I thought you were mad, Olivia admitted with a laugh. Or showing off. I never imagined you were starting a partnership that would change both our lives. Neither did I, Isaac confessed. I just knew I couldn't bear to see you dismissed so casually, the rest. He kissed her temple gently. The rest was the best kind of unexpected. As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, talking of future plans expanding their product line, possibly opening another shop in Santa Fe, adding a section to the ranch house for a proper laboratory where Olivia could develop new formulations. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of a wagon approaching. Isaac stood, hand instinctively moving to his hip where he no longer routinely wore a gun. "Are we expecting anyone?" he asked, peering into the darkness. "Not that I recall," Olivia replied, rising to stand beside him. As the wagon came into view, they recognized Mrs. Holloway's nephew driving, with the storekeeper's wife herself seated beside him, clutching what appeared to be a basket. "Olivia, Isaac," Mrs. Holloway called as they approached. "Forgive the late hour, but this couldn't wait until morning." Isaac helped the older woman down from the wagon as Olivia lit additional lanterns to illuminate the porch. "What brings you out so late, Mrs. Holloway?" Olivia asked, concerned by the unusual visit. The storekeeper's wife unveiled her basket with a flourish, revealing a small bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "This little one arrived on our doorstep an hour ago," she explained. "With this note." She handed Isaac a folded paper which he opened and read aloud. "This is Anna, age 3 months. Her mother was my sister who passed in childbirth. I cannot care for her. The Quinn family is known for kindness and prosperity. Please give her a good home. God bless you." Olivia gasped softly as Mrs. Holloway placed the basket in her arms. Peeling back the blanket, she revealed a sleeping infant with a shock of dark hair and perfectly formed features. "There's no signature," Isaac said, turning the note over. "No way to verify the story or find who left her. Sheriff's already searching," Mrs. Holloway explained. "But whoever left her is long gone. The stage came through earlier this evening, likely they continued on it." Olivia could not take her eyes off the baby's face. Something twisted in her heart, a yearning she had acknowledged but set aside during the whirlwind of business growth and newly wedded life. "She's beautiful," she whispered. Isaac moved beside her, looking down at the infant with an expression of wonder and uncertainty. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. Mrs. Holloway's expression softened. "Well, you could send her to the orphanage in Denver, or," she paused meaningfully, "a home with 2 loving parents. Prosperity and security would be exactly what the note requested." Olivia looked up at Isaac, a question in her eyes. They had discussed children as a future possibility, but had agreed to focus on establishing their businesses first. Yet here was a child in need of exactly what they could provide. "It would change everything," Isaac said softly, meeting her gaze. "Our plans, our schedules, our freedom to travel for business." "Yes," Olivia agreed. "It would." A moment of silent communication passed between them, the kind that only grows between 2 people who have built a partnership on absolute trust and understanding. Isaac gently touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "Hello, Anna," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." Mrs. Holloway beamed, clearly having anticipated this outcome. "I've brought some necessities to get you through the night," she said, gesturing to her nephew who was unloading a second basket from the wagon. "Diapers, a bottle, some milk. I'll send more tomorrow and you can get a proper cradle made." As the older woman instructed them on infant care basics, Olivia felt a surreal sense of how quickly life could change, how a single moment could alter the path ahead in ways both challenging and wonderful. She had experienced it when Isaac first appeared at her soap cart, and now again as this tiny life was unexpectedly placed in their care. After Mrs. Holloway departed, promising to return in the morning with more supplies, Olivia and Isaac sat together on their bedroom bed, the sleeping infant nestled between them. "Are we mad?" Olivia asked softly. "Taking in a child we know nothing about with no preparation." Isaac smiled, touching Anna's cheek with infinite gentleness. "Probably, but some of the best decisions come from the heart rather than careful planning." He looked up at Olivia. Like buying every bar of soap from a stubborn woman in the street, Olivia laughed softly. Or accepting a business proposition from a mysterious rancher. The baby stirred, tiny fists waving before settling again. In that moment, Olivia felt the pieces of her life shifting once more, making room for this unexpected blessing. Carter Quinn natural soaps and toiletries. And daughter, she murmured. A family business in the truest sense, Isaac agreed. They created a makeshift cradle from a drawer padded with blankets, placing it beside their bed. As they prepared for sleep, taking turns watching over their unexpected addition, Olivia reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. From a desperate young woman selling soap on a dusty street to a successful businesswoman with a loving husband, and now a child to care for, each step had seemed impossible until it was accomplished. Each victory had required courage, determination, and the willingness to accept help when it was offered with respect rather than condescension. As she drifted toward sleep, Isaac's arm around her and Anna's soft breathing filling the quiet room, Olivia remembered the laughter that had once mocked her efforts. How distant it seemed now, how inconsequential in the face of all they had built together. They had laughed when she tried to sell soap, until a cowboy bought every bar and eventually asked for her hand. Now that same cowboy, her partner, her husband, her champion, lay beside her as they embarked on yet another adventure neither had anticipated. Life, Olivia realized, was like her soap-making process, combining disparate elements with care and patience, then waiting for transformation. Sometimes the result was exactly as planned, and sometimes, like today, it yielded something unexpected and infinitely precious. Morning light filtered through the curtains as Olivia awoke to find Isaac already up, cradling Anna against his chest as he paced slowly by the window. The tenderness in his expression as he whispered to the infant words too soft for Olivia to catch filled her heart to overflowing. "Good morning," she said softly, sitting up. Isaac turned, smiling. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter Quinn. It seems our daughter is an early riser, our daughter." The words settled into Olivia's consciousness with surprising rightness. Whatever challenges lay ahead, legal complications, business adjustments, the thousand unexpected moments of parenthood, they would face them together, just as they had everything else. As they moved through their morning routine, adapted now to include a small bundle with surprisingly loud opinions about wet diapers and hunger, Olivia felt a deep certainty that this, too, was part of the journey they were meant to share. "You regret it?" she asked Isaac as they sat at the breakfast table, Anna sleeping peacefully in her makeshift cradle nearby. "That day in town when you stepped forward and changed both our lives." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand, his gray eyes warm with love and absolute certainty. "Not for a single moment," he replied. "Some bargains yield returns beyond any price." Olivia smiled, squeezing his hand in silent agreement. From bars of soap to bonds of family, some investments truly were priceless.